Have you ever wondered what will truly remain when the years pass? Your hair turns gray and the world seems to move forward without looking back? If there is anything we learn throughout life, it is that the confidence we had in our youth often crumbles like sand between our fingers. One such undeniable fact is the idea that family will always be our refuge. It is comfortable to believe this, since from a young age we are taught that blood ties are unbreakable. We are told that in old age our grandchildren will surround us with love and that we will be respected for the path we have traveled. But what if this belief is not only naive but also dangerous? Carl Jung, one of the greatest thinkers of depth psychology, warns us about a fact that is difficult to accept. Unconditional family support is an illusion that can be costly for those who stubbornly cling to it. Today, I want to take you on a journey of reflection and self-discovery, a journey that may forever change your vision of the future. But before we continue, I will ask you a sincere question. Are you ready to face the truth about old age and human relationships? Because what you will hear here is uncomfortable, but it could be liberating. Imagine for a moment a woman named Helena. She dedicated her entire life to her family. She lovingly raised her children, was present for every important moment, and made sacrifices, leaving her dreams aside to provide them with a better life. She naturally expected that when it was her turn to need care and companionship, her children would be there. After all, was that not fair? She gave them everything, so naturally she would receive that love in return. But the reality was different. Their children grew up, started their own families, and moved to other cities. Phone calls became rare and visits even less frequent. There were always obligations, always a rush. And then Helena realized the bitter truth. No one was coming to save her from loneliness. What happened to her occurs more often than we would like to admit, because the truth is that children do not belong to their parents. They grow up, create their own worlds, and these worlds do not always include their parents as the main characters. Society makes us believe that the life cycle is predictable, and that when we get older, we will naturally be surrounded by the love of our family. But the reality is that many parents, grandparents spend their last years feeling invisible to those to whom they dedicated their entire lives. Carl Jung said that the aging process requires a deep transformation in how we see ourselves and our relationships. The great tragedy in aging is the misunderstanding that the role we play in people's lives changes and often disappears. Now think with me. If family is not the unshakable rock we imagined, what are we really left with? What I'm about to tell you may sound harsh, but it needs to be said. No one promised you that your family would be your eternal refuge. No one guaranteed they would visit you every weekend. No one signed a contract stating that your grandchildren would grow up and value your presence more than their mobile phone screens. No one assured you that just because you gave all your strength to others, others would do the same for you. But the problem is that we have been told this lie so many times that we begin to believe it. And when that lie falls apart, we feel betrayed. But betrayed by whom? By children? By fate? By time? No, we feel betrayed by an illusion we ourselves nourish. But Jung gives us a new path. He teaches us that liberation comes when we realize that the only person who can guarantee us peace and security in old age is ourselves, and that is exactly what we are going to talk about now. If family is not the unbreakable foundation, as we were told, what really makes us move forward? The answer may be uncomfortable. What keeps us on our feet is what we build within ourselves. Schopenhauer, another great philosopher, said that true happiness cannot depend on anything external. Anything can be taken from you, and family is within that external. Children can leave, partners can leave, friends can go another way. But there is something that no one can take from you. This is what Carl Jung, Schopenhauer, and many other great thinkers understood. The strength you develop within yourself is the only guarantee of a dignified future. Before talking about how to develop that strength, look back. How many people have you seen suffer because they invested everything in their family and were left alone? How many parents have you seen spending years waiting for visits that never arrived? If there is anything you need to understand before it is too late, it is that time does not wait. It will not give you a second chance to prepare better. That is precisely why in the next part of this video, we will talk about what can truly guarantee a full and independent life after 60. If there is anything you need to understand before it is too late, it is that time does not wait. It will not give you a second chance to prepare better. That is precisely why in the next part of this video, we will talk about what can truly guarantee a full and independent life after 60. The answer is not in the family. The answer is not in the children. The answer lies in something much deeper, more powerful, and more liberating. And I invite you to continue this journey with me because what comes next may forever change your outlook on life. Have you ever wondered why some pains are harder to heal than others? I am not talking about physical pain, the kind that time, rest, or medicine can alleviate. I am talking about the invisible wounds, the ones that are born when we expect something and face the emptiness of indifference. Expectation is a slow poison, a silent promise that we make to ourselves without realizing that no one but us signed it. From an early age, we are taught that true love is accompanied by reciprocity. If we take care of someone, they will take care of us. If we are always present, they will be there too. We believe that others recognize our sacrifices and will reciprocate. But then time passes, life moves forward, and one day we realize the bitter truth. Not all love manifests as we expect. Does this mean that people do not love us? Not always. But it means that their love follows its own logic, not ours. And it is from there that wounds arise. Wounds arise as a result of the collision between our internal projections and external reality. The more expectations we create, the stronger the disappointments when they are not met. And perhaps, without even realizing it, you have fallen into one of these illusions. Let us go back in time for a moment. Imagine a woman named Laura. Laura is 63 years old, and she has dedicated most of her life to her family. She raised 2 children alone, made sacrifices they will never know, gave up her dreams, struggled with financial difficulties, and worked nights on end. She is proud of what she has done because for her, love has always been synonymous with giving. But today, looking at the life she has built, she feels invisible. Her children do not call as often as she would like. When they call, they always seem to be in a hurry, never needing a long conversation. When grandchildren appear, they are glued to their mobile phones. And the friends she had in her youth, many are gone, others are lost in time. What did she do wrong? Where did she fail to deserve this oblivion? But that is not the question you should be asking. The right question is, did they forget her? Or did Laura simply expect something that was never promised? Laura is not alone. Perhaps in some way, you have already felt the same way. Perhaps you have helped someone who never thanked you. Perhaps you have waited for recognition that never came. Perhaps you have trusted someone who let you down. And the hardest thing to accept is that the mistake was not in loving, nor in the fact that others did not respond as you would have liked. The mistake lay in the invisible expectation formed between you. Jung teaches us that most human suffering comes from the illusion that someone owes us something, and that illusion can trap us in different ways. Sometimes it arises within the family, as in Laura's case. Sometimes it manifests in friendships when we expect more attention than we receive, and sometimes even in love relationships when we give ourselves beyond what the other can reciprocate. But here is a truth that few accept. No one owes anyone anything. And the sooner we understand this, the sooner we will free ourselves from the vicious cycle of disappointment and resentment. So what should we do? Just stop loving? Stop investing in others? No, but we need to change the direction of our gaze. Instead of asking ourselves, why don't they value me? Or, why don't they reciprocate? Start asking yourself, what can I do to strengthen myself emotionally? How can I be happy regardless of the reactions of others? What do I really control? Because at the end of the day, you do not control the love of others, but you control the love you develop for yourself. You do not control whether your children call you every day, but you can build a fulfilling life so that even if they do not, there will still be reasons to smile. You do not control whether others recognize your efforts, but you can learn to live in such a way that such recognition is not necessary for your peace. And Jung gives us an important key to this process. Detachment is not the absence of love. It is emotional freedom. If there is anything you need to understand before it is too late, it is that time does not wait. It will not give you a second chance to prepare better. That is precisely why, in the next part of this video, we will talk about what can truly guarantee a full and independent life after 60. When you stop waiting for others to fill the voids that only you can fill, something magical happens. Resentment dissolves, longing loses its power, and loneliness becomes a choice, not a punishment. The question is, are you ready for these changes? Perhaps this conversation has awakened something inside you. Perhaps you have realized that you have spent most of your life being disappointed because you expected too much from others. Perhaps you understand that your happiness has always been in the wrong hands and that now is the time to take it back. But I know that this path is not easy. Breaking down years of expectations is not something that can be done overnight. That is why I want to invite you to take the first step on this path. There is a method inspired by Jung's reflections that can help you build a new mindset, find inner peace and emotional clarity in just a few minutes a day. This method is called Jung's method, 5 minutes a day for inner peace and clarity of mind. It is not just a book. It is a practical guide to help you start this change. It may be the beginning. The link to the ebook is located in the pinned comment of this video. And now I ask you, are you ready to take the first step towards a life in which your peace will no longer depend on others? Because in the next part of this journey, we will explore the power of a well-lived solitude and how it can become the key to the freedom you have always suspected. Imagine that suddenly everyone around you disappeared. No phone calls, no messages, no social obligations, just you. How would you feel? If your first answer was fear, longing, or a feeling of abandonment, then perhaps in that lies the root of your greatest sufferings. But now imagine something different. What if that loneliness were not a punishment but a gift? What if instead of being a painful void it became a portal to the peace you have always sought? Carl Jung believed that the ability to be alone is one of the greatest psychological achievements of a person. For him, the more a person needs the approval of others to feel good, the more they distance themselves from their true essence. But, in practice, almost no one talks about this. We live in a world that celebrates connections, social networks, meetings, calls, constant notifications. The idea of being alone seems frightening because we are used to seeing it as a sign of failure. But what happens when we discover that loneliness is not absence but the presence of oneself? Have you ever noticed that some of the loneliest people in the world are surrounded by crowds? They have family, friends, colleagues. They have someone to talk to, somewhere to go, someone to share a table with. But deep down they feel invisible, and at the same time, there are those who live alone and find in that silence a peace that most will never know. What separates these two realities? Perception. If you see loneliness as something desperate to be filled, then it becomes a prison. But if you see it as an opportunity for self-discovery, then it can become the shortest path to freedom. Now tell me, how do you handle loneliness? Do you avoid it at all costs, or have you already learned to turn it into a refuge? Leave your thoughts in the comments because that answer says more about you than you think. Have you ever stopped to think about why so many people are afraid to be alone? What exactly is behind that discomfort? The answer may be confusing. Loneliness forces us to face ourselves. No distractions, no external noise, no excuses. When you are alone, all the emotions you have buried over time come to the surface, and that is scary. That is perhaps why some people avoid silence. They turn on the television without watching it, aimlessly scroll through the pages of their mobile phones, create obligations for themselves to avoid what is truly important. But the question is, does escape work? Or by avoiding loneliness, are we simply postponing an inevitable encounter? Carl Jung said that everyone has within themselves parts that they are unaware of, and if we do not look them in the eye, they will eventually begin to control us. In other words, the more we run away from loneliness, the more we become hostages to something we never learned to understand. So, what is the way out? The answer lies not in avoiding loneliness but in redefining it. Look closely. You do not need a crowd to feel whole. What you need is a solid relationship with yourself, and that relationship can only be built in silence. Think of the most brilliant minds in history: artists, philosophers, scientists. Many of them went through long periods of complete solitude, and it was in those moments that they found their greatest inspiration. Leonardo da Vinci said that great minds need silence to create. Nietzsche believed that loneliness is for the strong, while the weak seek the crowd. And Jung shows us that a person who is not capable of being alone will never be truly free. What does all of this mean? It means that loneliness is not the problem. The problem is that you do not know it. So here is the challenge. What if for one day you decide to embrace loneliness instead of fighting it? What if instead of trying to fill it with distractions, you turn it into a portal to something greater? What do you think would happen? Tell me in the comments. I am eager to know how you see it. You can continue to believe that loneliness is the enemy. You can continue to fill your life with people, obligations, and distractions just to avoid feeling the silence. You can continue to avoid looking inside yourself, running away from what only you know. But you can also make another choice. You can decide that there is nothing more liberating than being in your own presence. You can transform loneliness from a burden into a refuge. You can discover that true emotional independence comes not from the outside world, but from the inner peace that no one can take away from you. And when that happens, when you truly learn to feel good in your own company, something magical happens. You stop needing others to feel whole. You do not become indifferent or cold, but rather you become free. Now tell me, if you knew that by embracing your loneliness, you would find the greatest peace in your life, would you be afraid of it, or would you embrace it with open arms? Think about it. Next, let's talk about something that few have the courage to admit. We will discuss financial independence and why depending on others can be the biggest mistake of your life. Imagine the following scenario. You are 75 years old, your health is not what it used to be, and some simple tasks such as climbing stairs or carrying bags of groceries begin to seem like daily challenges. You need help. Now tell me, who will be there for you when that day comes? You might think, of course my children, but let's face it, what if they cannot? What if they live far away, busy with their own families, their own problems, their own lives? What if the only thing standing between you and a dignified old age is what you have built for yourself over the years? Carl Jung said that a person's freedom is directly related to their ability to provide for themselves in survival and in the world we live in. That freedom has a clear name: financial independence. But before we talk about that, I need to ask you something. What would you do if you suddenly realized that you can no longer count on anyone? Let's face it, we often live as if youth will last forever. We believe that we will always have time to find something, to start saving money later, to think about it later. But you know what is most shocking? More than 60% of people over 60 do not have significant financial reserves. This means that for every 10 people reaching old age, 6 of them are completely vulnerable, depending on the goodwill of family members or social assistance systems. And here is the scariest part. These people did not reach this point because they decided to do so. They simply did not realize that they were heading towards it. And now when they look back, they realize that there is no time to go back. Now tell me, do you want to be one of these people who live their lives believing that when old age comes, their family will be their greatest support? But let's be honest, that is not always how it works. Yes, there are united families. Yes, there are children who will do anything for their parents. But there is also another reality that few like to talk about. How many elderly people today live as an invisible burden in their homes? How many of them depend financially on children, who often do not have the resources to help them? How many feel that every request for a favor is accompanied by a burden of guilt? How many even avoid visiting a doctor because they do not want to cause problems? The truth is harsh, but it must be said. Those who depend on others lose the right to choose. You lose the right to choose where to live. You lose the right to choose what to eat. You lose the right to say no to impositions. And if there is one thing Carl Jung teaches us, it is that true freedom is the ability to own your life until the last day. So I ask you, what is your freedom worth? If you do not have your own resources, your old age will not be a choice. It will be a contingency. And here is the biggest problem surrounding this. People will not always act in your best interest. Have you ever heard stories of children taking their parents' money? Of grandchildren who convince their grandparents to transfer assets in their name? Of relatives who take care of an elderly person only to guarantee their future inheritance? If you have not heard, I will tell you now. A study from 2024 showed that 25% of older adults suffer some form of financial exploitation in their families. This means that 1 in 4 people who believed they could trust their children or grandchildren ended up being betrayed. And if you think this only happens to others, think again. All it takes is a small planning error, a moment of vulnerability, and suddenly, the control of your life is no longer in your hands. Now tell me, are you willing to take that risk? Have you ever talked to an elderly person whose survival depends on others? If you pay attention, you will see something in their eyes. A heavy silence, a restrained sadness, a feeling that if they could, they would have done everything differently. But they cannot. Because when you realize that freedom is lost, it is usually too late to recover it, and all that remains is to watch others decide your destiny. Now tell me, do you want to experience the same regret in a few years, or would you prefer to do something now while you still can? You have 2 options. You can continue to live as if old age will never come, as if time were infinite, as if family were a guarantee of a safe future, or you can see the reality. You can decide today that no one but yourself will be responsible for your well-being in the future, and you can start making decisions that guarantee that over time, you will still be the master of your life. What do you choose? Think about it. Let's talk about something even deeper. The biggest mistake we make when we get older and how to avoid it before it is too late. Time is a relentless teacher. It teaches us the lessons we ignored in our youth, puts us face to face with the truths we have avoided for years, and ultimately shows us that many certainties were just illusions. But the biggest mistake we make when we get older is not the time we let slip away. It is not the money we do not save. It is not avoiding loneliness until it is too late. The biggest mistake is the unwillingness to accept the truth about ourselves, and that truth is simple. No one can save you but yourself. Not your family, not your friends, not the government, either. You can wait. You can believe that someone will come and lend you a hand. You can live comfortably thinking that the love of others will be enough to protect you. But if something the years have taught us is that people follow their own journeys, and if you have not built your own foundation, if you have not built your foundation, you will eventually be left waiting for a rescue that will never come. Now, tell me, what are you going to do with this truth? Youth deceives us. It makes us believe that we control the future, that people will be there for us because they love us, that destiny will follow a predictable script. But time presents us with a cruel reality. Children move to different cities, friends move away, spouses leave before us, and suddenly, the life we imagined crumbles before our eyes. Now tell me, are you ready to face that reality, or will you continue to close your eyes believing that it does not happen to everyone? Because the truth is, it happens to many people. There are those who expect the worst, and those who prepare for it. Which of those people do you choose to be? This is a question that no one likes to ask, but it is the only one that really matters. What will remain when everything you considered right disappears? What will remain when your health is no longer the same? When your social circle shrinks? When you realize that time, which once seemed endless, has now become a scarce commodity? The answer is as harsh as it is liberating. Only you will remain. What you have built, what you have learned, who you have become. And if you have built nothing within yourself, if you have spent your whole life waiting for the world to give you security, love, and stability, you will be lost. Now tell me, what have you built within yourself? If at this moment you feel that you do not have a clear answer, it means that there is still time to do something about it. The question is, will you have the courage to do it? The answer to all of this is right in front of us, but almost no one notices it. Carl Jung showed us that the greatest goal of human life is not the love of others. It is not acceptance. It is not financial security. It is something much deeper. It is the search for individuation, Individuation is the process of becoming a complete and autonomous person, independent of external approval. It is the moment when you realize that you do not need anyone to validate your existence, in which you discover that true peace comes not from what others can give you but from what you can find within yourself. And you know what is most interesting? When you reach that stage, fear disappears. The fear of loneliness, the fear of being rejected, the fear of being abandoned. Because you understand that as long as you have you will never be truly alone. And now I ask you, do you want to reach that level? Or would you prefer to spend the rest of your life waiting? Now you know what needs to be done. You know that you cannot depend on others. You know that you need to build your financial, emotional, and psychological independence. You know that your freedom is directly related to how much you can provide for yourself. The question is, with this knowledge, are you going to ignore it and continue living as always? Or are you going to use it to change your life before it is too late? If you choose the second option, now is the time to act. And to help you get started in the next part of this video, I will introduce you to a practical, step-by-step guide to applying everything we have talked about here. Be ready, because what comes next is not just a closing. It is the beginning of a new life for everyone who is willing to change. What would you do if you knew that you held in your hands the key to a truly free life? What if you knew that there was a way to live these years with dignity, self-reliance, and peace of mind, without waiting for others to decide your destiny? Perhaps at some point in this video, you felt a heaviness in your chest, a discomfort. A truth, although not easy to accept, resonated deeply within you, because the reality is that no one can save us but ourselves. No relationship, no promise, no expectation is safer than what we build within ourselves. But understanding this truth is not enough. If it were, thousands of people today would not be trapped in a cycle of dependency, disappointment, and fear of the future. True transformation only happens when knowledge becomes action, and that is exactly what we are going to do now. Because today you will not just reflect, today you will start acting. Step 1. Break with emotional dependency. The first change happens within you, and for that, you need to understand one thing. Love cannot be a prison. What does this mean? It means that you need to learn to love without expecting anything in return. It means that you must free yourself from the belief that others are obligated to fill your voids. It does not mean that you should distance yourself from your family, friends, or the people you love. It simply means that your well-being cannot depend on their actions. If someone calls you, great. If someone visits you, wonderful. But if they do not, you will still be okay because you have not built your world on someone else's presence. The greatest proof of love you can offer yourself is to become emotionally free. And that leads us to the next step. Step 2. Build your financial security. If there is something that deprives a person of peace, it is financial uncertainty, because without money, you have no choice, and without choice, you have no freedom. So if today you have not yet started structuring your financial security for the future, start now, and your age does not matter. If you are 30, you have time. If you are 50, there is still much that can be done. If you are 70, perhaps time is not as abundant, but there is still room for smart decisions. Because the worst mistake is not starting late, but never starting at all. So ask yourself, do you have a reserve fund? Do you have a source of income besides what you receive from your pension or your current job? Are you learning to manage your resources so you do not depend on others? If the answer to any of these questions is no, from this moment on, that should be your priority. And if you do not know where to start, seek knowledge. After all, financial freedom does not depend on how much money you have. It is about how long you can live without depending on anyone. Step 3. Embrace loneliness as your ally. Remember what we said about loneliness? It becomes a punishment only for those who do not know how to use it. But for those who learn to live with it well, it becomes one of life's greatest gifts. So here is the challenge. Spend a whole day in your own company. No social media, no television, no random conversations filling the silence. Just you. And on that day, pay attention to what you feel. If there is discomfort, it means there is something inside you that needs to be worked on. But if peace comes, you will discover something rare and powerful, the freedom to be enough for yourself. Carl Jung said that a person who has found peace in their own loneliness will never be a hostage to anything or anyone, and that peace is something that no one can take away from you unless you allow it. Step 4. Cultivate something that no one can take away from you. Time takes much. Appearance transforms, relationships change, material possessions come and go. But there is something that nothing and no one can take away from you. What you have learned throughout your life. The knowledge you acquire, the reflections you deepen, the clarity of mind you create. That is what will stay with you forever. And if there is a way to ensure that your mind remains sharp and your soul continues to evolve, it is to never stop learning, never stop reflecting, never stop asking questions and seeking answers, because, in the end, true freedom is not determined by what you have but by who you become. Now tell me, who do you want to become? If you have come this far, it means that you are ready. Ready to change, ready to take control of your life, ready to build a future in which you are the only one responsible for your peace. But none of this starts without the first step, and that is why I want to invite you. There is a method that can help you assimilate and apply everything we have talked about here in a practical way. This method is called Jung's method. 5 minutes a day for inner peace and clarity of mind. It is not just a book, it is a guide for all who want to break free from emotional dependence, transform loneliness, and develop a truly independent mindset. And best of all, you only need 5 minutes a day to start this transformation. If you want to take the first step, the link to the book is in the pinned comment of this video. And now I ask you, will you just listen to this message and continue living the same way? Or will you act and change your life while there is still time? The decision is yours. If this video made sense to you, do not let this reflection get lost. Leave your comment below. Tell me what moment impacted you the most, or how you see this topic in your life. And if you want to share anonymously, feel free to do so. The main thing is your voice, and before you leave, do something important. Like this video. This way, this message can reach more people. Subscribe to the channel Fullness in Reflection, because here every week we bring reflections that can change your perspective on life.